A very, very good afternoon. A warm welcome to Dan Really Likes Wine, presented by Pick n Pay, and welcome not, as you can probably see, to the Dan Really Likes Wine cellar, but instead to a rather grand residence in Pretoria. As I look out from behind our camera crew, we have got jacarandas in bloom. We've got a beautiful Pretoria afternoon because I'm in Pretoria and I'm at the residence, the official residence of the Portuguese ambassador, as a guest in celebration of South African Cap Classique. Now, why on earth would be sitting in the Portuguese ambassador's house drinking Cap Classique, and why is there a Portuguese version of Gianluca Vialli sitting beside me? Well, there's a very good reason for both of those, and they connect rather nicely because the gentleman beside me is Joaquim Sir. Have I pronounced that correctly?
Yeah, that's 100%.
Joaquim Sir, kind of Portuguese South African, because I know South Africa is very close to your heart.
Yes.
You are the managing director of Amorim South Africa,
Yes. Yeah.
so you're responsible for pretty much every single cork in South Africa, just about.
Yeah, I
Close
mean,
to
I would
it.
say, no, that's nowadays, that's very close.
Well, welcome. The reason we have you here, the reason we are at the Portuguese Embassy, is that we're celebrating the Amorim Cap Classique Challenge. And a little later on the show, Pieter Ferreira will come out and chat to us. We'll also speak to Johan Malan from Simonsig and RJ Botha from Kleine Zalze as we celebrate what has been a really good year for Cap Classique. And it's a year celebrated with the Amorim Challenge. And it's a challenge that as Amorim Cork, you guys support. And I'm very interested to find out why, but before we do that, I love finding out about people. And so I'd like to know what on earth a Portuguese guy called Joaquim is doing in South Africa in the wine industry.
Yeah, well, it's an incredible country, but I must, go back in time. I've been working for Amorim for a few years, and back in '95, they said in summertime, do you want to go for training in one of the Amorim companies, or do you want to take holidays? I said, well, I'll take the first. So I came to South Africa in 1995 for training. It was just after South Africa won the Rugby World Cup. So there was that magic vibe. And so after that, there was a lot of changes. South Africa was starting to export a lot, and there was a need for having someone with a bit more experience from Portugal. So they made me an offer, are you keen in taking it? And that's when the love story started.
You represent a Portuguese company. Tell me about Portugal, about corks, about how all of this works.
Mm-hmm. So, the cork forest exists mainly in the Mediterranean peninsula, or the Mediterranean basin. So you look into Portugal, Spain, Italy a little bit, France, Sardinia, as I said, in Spain, and then you look into the north of Africa, Morocco, Algeria, and Tunisia. So that's very much where cork is harvested, and that's the reason why the industry is based there. I mean, South Africa has great conditions to grow cork trees, but the only challenge is, you need to plant it. Once you plant a tree, you need to wait 25 years for the first harvest.
25
years, and that first harvest, the bark is not of good quality to make wine stoppers, because it's a young tree and very active, so the bark grows too fast and there's lots of cracks. So if we put a stopper sealing a bottle, you quickly would lose all the gas, or you wouldn't seal it at all. So you need to wait 9 years to do the second harvest of the tree. Obviously it's all hand harvested still. That second bark is not good either. So it's only when the tree is 42 years old, that's when you start getting the right density to make the best wine stoppers.
So it requires a little patience.
It requires a little patience, yes. So that's one of the reasons where if people want to invest in it, they have to wait a long time, and it remains in that area.
What about the process? It's something, I'll be honest, I haven't always given that much thought to. We open wine happily, and goes the corkscrew, out comes the cork, away goes the wine. And we're usually so hurried to get to the wine, we don't really think about the cork much.
Yes.
How does that process work? Are you simply cutting a nice little cork shape out of a tree? Or
So once the bark is harvested, we have to sort it, because out of a tree, you're going to get thick cork, you're going to get thin cork, because it depends on how the tree is exposed to sun. The more exposure to sun, the faster it will grow. So second, it's the grade. So it's thickness, and then it's grade. So it's a whole artisanal product still nowadays, although we try to mechanize, is not easy. So it employs obviously lots of people. So there's the sorting process. We have to divide the bark that we harvest in different pieces. The second stage then is to mature the bark. The bark needs to dry for 9 months before we can actually use it. And then you go through the process. We have a punching machine that punches the bark out, or punches the cork out of the bark. There's a cleaning process, obviously, because there's a lot of compounds in the cork. We sterilize it, we ship it to South Africa, and here we have the second round, which is to brand the wine cork according to the wine estate. And there's a surface coating that we apply, and ready to go.
How many corks do you produce in a year for South Africa?
South Africa only represents probably 0.71% of our global turnover. We do between, close to 60 million corks per year.
60 million corks?
Yes.
And that's 0.71%.
Yes, so Amorim
you make a lot of corks.
It's 5.5 billion per year.
Really?
Yeah.
Well done, world. We're drinking lots of wine. That's fantastic. All right, so corks you make are not just the standard cylindrical types. You also make the ones for the wine we're drinking now. And I've got a glass of Villera. Hello, Jeff, sitting in my glass at the moment. The Amorim Challenge. You could, as guys who make corks, apply to any particular wine. Why this category?
Because there is a mutual relation. Without champagne, there wouldn't be cork, and without cork, there wouldn't be champagne. The whole story around champagne, Dom Perignon was supposed to have started the whole thing. He was trying to do a second fermentation on the sparkling wine, and he was using wooden bungs. So every time the second fermentation would kick, the bung would shoot. So that's, when he had the idea, why shouldn't I use cork? Because it's elastic. And voila, that's how champagne was created. So we have a great association for more than 3 centuries. But in South Africa, I firmly believe that, as a supplier of the industry, your partner is not just taking, you also have to give back. And when, we discussed this at the time, it was still with winemakers, and they said, no, we have this idea. And for us, it was also a great way of getting close to the customers, learning, because closer relationships allow you to learn with the people that know, and also eager to learn. And it's amazing. It's been 20 years. I think we're looking younger, but I think it's above the end.
Definitely.
But it's amazing the fact that still nowadays, Pieter was just talking about all the research that we're still doing and we're still learning, and you take a lot of glasses of bubbly to get there.
The corks that you have are of a very specific shape when it comes to bubbles, whether it's champagne, whether it's
it's cylindrical stoppers.
Really?
Yeah. So you insert the cork halfway only, and then it's the CO2 in the bottle that creates the pressure to keep the shape.
I learned stuff every week on this show. I didn't know that.
So whenever you find a cork that has a peg, it means that most likely the wine is now flat. If it has pressure, the cork will have the mushroom shape.
So there we go. All right, I've got to ask you the difficult question. Yeah. So this is me adopting my Derek Watts on carte blanche mode and giving you that evil look. The problem with corks from time to time is wine becoming corked. It's been a problem for a long time. It's one I sense is not so much of a problem anymore. Why is that a problem, and how is technology, and I assume it is, changing that to make corks less susceptible to the problems that exist? Yeah,
well, I think it's a concerted effort. What's cork taint? And it's obviously it can be attributed to the cork stopper, but it's also related to cell hygiene or to wine that gets oxidized and people think it's corked. So it's, as I said, it's a concerted effort of the industry. The industry is learning how to be better, how to be more clinical about, from the very beginning till the end, because bottling is as important as winemaking. You can make the best wine. If you don't bottle it meticulously like you made your wine, you could end, with problems. So there's all that small fine details that I think make part of that concerted effort. I mean, you know, it's TCA can occur with screw caps, can occur with plastic, can occur in bag-in-a-box. I'll give you lots of examples. It's not only with cork stoppers, but with cork stoppers, there's been obviously a lot of learning in terms of understanding the product. Technology is helping a lot. I would say, I mean, we are now talking more about the positives of cork than the really risks of using cork. I mean, you look into, for example, the latest report of Tim Atkin. Out of the 160 wines that he rated 95 points plus, 160 was sealed with cork. So there's a recognition from the wine industry that wine is more than just a closure. Wine is a winemaking product because, I mean, it's part of the bark of an oak tree, like a barrel. I mean, a vine is a tree. So there's a direct connection, and it definitely contributes for what happens in the bottle once it seals. There's a whole continuous process of developing. That's what we call maturation. And maturation is different from aging. Aging, it's all about oxygen, and that you can manipulate with different closures because it seals. Maturation is different. Only if you have a cork there.
And of course, there's the romance to it.
Exactly.
Joaquim, it's been a delight having you on the show. I suspect we're going to see a bit more of you,
Yes.
Because it's an area that I think needs a little bit more discussion.
Yes.
So let's do that. Let's have some more conversation. But
Thank you.
I need to speak to another Portuguese guy, so I need to
Sure.
evict you and bring in our ambassador.
Sure.
Thank you for joining
Yes.
the show. Thank you for supporting South African wine.
Thank
I
you.
look forward to many more glasses with you.
100%. Thank you.
There we go. Joaquim Sa is the managing director of Amorim South Africa. 60 billion corks a year. That's an extraordinary amount of wine. I'm trying to get my head around that number. So, a Portuguese South African. We've got another sort of Portuguese South African. I think South Africa's crept into his heart. So let's welcome in because we're in his home. Please welcome in Mr. Ambassador. This is His Excellency, Mr. Carvalho. Welcome to the show. Lovely to have you with us.
Thank you.
And I have to start because I'm feeling a little bit guilty, Mr. Ambassador. So I have to start with an apology.
Oh.
I'll take you back to 2009, my first visit to Portugal. I was on a holiday with a group of friends in the Algarve, which is a glorious part of the world, as you'll know well. And there was a particular girl on this trip who I was trying very hard to impress. She's now my wife, so it clearly worked.
Oh.
And we went down to the supermarket. We stayed at a lovely house, beautiful view, about half an hour or so west of Faro. And we went to the shops, and everybody else was buying Portuguese wine for €2-3 a bottle. I was being very snobbish and trying to look very cool. And I was buying French wine for €20 a bottle and trying to look important and impress her. And my wine finished, so I reluctantly had a glass of their wine. It was so much better than the French wine. And that was my introduction to something that I think a lot of South Africans maybe don't realize, that Portuguese wine is absolutely fantastic.
It is outstanding. I'm proud of my country for many reasons, but wine is certainly one of them. Winemaking was introduced in Portugal 2,500 years ago by the Phoenicians. So we go back a long way. Winemaking was probably, invented as a way to conserve grape juice in what is nowadays Georgia and Caucasus, roughly, and then it was spread around the Mediterranean by the Phoenicians. And we were part of the Phoenician network before the Romans came and conquered us, or conquered what is nowadays the Iberian Peninsula, and that's history. But to tell you that, yes, indeed, we've been making wine for quite a long time. We had a big transformation in the wine sector in Portugal in my lifetime, in the 1980s, 1990s. When we suddenly have to not just have a wine, but also share it in the European market. And that has pushed us to build on what we have into something that became, I'd say, even better. So that was a transformation moment that in the Portuguese wine sector, which again is 8 years old. I mean, the oldest demarcated region in the world is Porto. It is before Bordeaux. mid 18th century. But we have built up, broadened it, and broadened its appeal. I was for a while consul general in Hong Kong. And Hong Kong, as you know, is one of the biggest wine markets in the world. And so promoting wine was part of my portfolio. And I was doing the various events. One day, someone from the, the Portuguese Trading Association and had the idea of making a blind competition, blind tasting, between Douro, which is in the north of Portugal, and Bordeaux. The interesting point was that and the challenge was accepted. So our French friends, and we are good at those friends, came with bottles that would be roughly 5 to 10 times the price of our most expensive. And so, I had the notion that this is quite a daring challenge, because you're putting a GP car competing with a Formula One.
It was a brave move.
That's okay. I think that's the best thing that we can have is honorable defeat. Well, I must say I was quite impressed, because in the blind tasting and with the various classifications that we have in the room, the experts panel, the public that was in the audience, and then a special select panel for some categories. Interestingly, the French wine is always won, number one. But number two in all classifications was blind, came second,
Really?
Always.
Now, I'm not surprised.
So that's quite honorable, I'd say, for roughly a tenth of the. It varied, but the price ranges were half to a tenth of the price.
And this, of course, is something we have in common. We, as South Africa and as Portugal, we make terrific wine, and it's wine at great value. So I think we'll be diplomatic, which of course is your forte, and say that South Africa and Portugal are in the top 2 countries in the world and the top 2 winemaking countries. Yes. Tell me a bit about your time in South Africa. I get a sense that it's found a very special place in your heart. What is it about South Africa that has really struck a chord for you?
Oh, it's beautiful. It's a beautiful country. It has all the complications of the world in it, we can have a long conversation on the challenges that we face here, from politics to the economy. All that is true, and all that is reported. What is behind that is a stunningly beautiful country with stunningly friendly and I'd say interesting people. And that is something that is rarely reported outside, and I'm happy to report. I'm happy to tell people about this. It is my duty to promote the links between Portugal and South Africa, and therefore, casting a good image about the country where I'm serving is also part of my duty. But it is a part of my duty that I perform without any effort. I've been to the 9 provinces. I crisscrossed the country driving my car. From Limpopo to the Western Cape, to Northern Cape, to KwaZulu-Natal, and I've been around. I went diving in Aliwal Shoal near Durban. I went to the amphitheater, which is I think the highest point in South Africa, the Monsters. It's stunningly beautiful. People think about Cape Town and the Kruger, and there's a whole lot of things between those 2 points.
So I'm very glad that we have not just an ambassador for Portugal, but you become an ambassador for South Africa, which is fantastic. What about being an ambassador for South African wine? Have you discovered it? Have you enjoyed it?
Well, I'm not an ambassador for South African wine, and there I have to make a point of, a point of order here. I make a point of, in this house, only serving Portuguese wine.
So this is an exception today. We're drinking South African wine. This would not normally happen.
This was a special moment today, where the point was a cork, and it is in cooperation with a very big, a very important Portuguese company that is the major wine, wine cork stopper. Sorry for the that works where there is wine production in the world, and therefore naturally works with the local producers. And the point being the cork, then I'm happy to open my doors. But again, it's something that I do without effort. Living here, I do serve South African wine to Portuguese friends. So I do that a little, but that is more discreet. I'm hoping that I'm revealing the secret here.
We won't tell anyone. It's just between the two of us.
But then one day perhaps we should do a blind tasting between Portugal and South African wines. Why not?
I think that would be fantastic. And of course, we've got a number of Portuguese grapes. We find things like Touriga Nacional here in South Africa. We have our own Cape Vintage, which is a homage to port. So there are some nice links wine-wise. And I love the fact that there are those parallels. And I think that there are a lot of similarities between Portuguese people and South African people. We love food and wine. We're very family-oriented. We share a lot of similar characteristics. And so I think visiting Portugal, as I've done, would be great for South Africans to do. Give us a couple of reasons for people who are watching this that maybe haven't been to Portugal. The world's opening up. We can travel a little again. Give us some good reasons to go. Where would we go in Portugal? Why would we go there?
Portugal is stunningly beautiful in a relatively small space. If you compare it with a much bigger European country, France. France has the north and the Atlantic and the south and the Mediterranean. We have that in a country that is much, much smaller. If you drive 100 kilometers north of Lisbon, you get into the Atlantic European landscape. If you drive 100 kilometers to the south, you find the Mediterranean. It's compressed diversity, it's compressed complexity, if you will. You got the mountains, you got the plains, you got the fish, which is unique. The uniqueness of Portuguese fish has to do with the special characteristics of our sea. I told them about that. So I know them under the water. Because the Portuguese coast drops into abyssal depths almost immediately after we jump into the water. In a way that the sea's particularly tough in Portugal, and that is some foreign sailor that sailed in Portugal said, I mean, if you don't sink here, you don't sink anywhere. And that's why we went around the world, and that's how we rounded the Cape of Good Hope. That was aptly called the Cape of Storms until we discovered it for the opening into India and Asia. All that you find in Portugal, you find Lisbon, which is a city that is founded by the Phoenicians. It's the oldest. It is the oldest capital in Europe, continuously inhabited, competing with Athens and ahead of Rome. Because we go back to the Phoenicians and not the Romans. But then you have Porto and the Portland area. For instance, one of the big discoveries in that transformation of the Portuguese wine sector was that the Douro Valley, which I mean ends in the city of Porto, and therefore the name Port, because it was shipped from the city of Porto, but you don't have any grapes in the city. It's simply the point of trade. That valley that used to be for port, people discovered that those grapes that produce the port, and that is actually the Touriga, produce a fantastic table wine. And a lot of the wine estates that were, either making port or selling the grapes, discovered, why don't we do wine with this? And that this is the revelation, because the Douro area as such is a relatively, for table wine, relatively young, demarcated region. They have been doing port for a long, long time, but the big, strong reds from the Douro Valley are relatively new acquisition to our portfolio, and which has taken the world by storm. As I told you, on a blind tasting, our Douro came second to Bordeaux the top wines in Bordeaux, and I won't give you the brand, but you'll know them all.
And I can completely understand because, as I said, I drank them. I was very pleasantly surprised. And in fact, I think early next year, you can't see him now, but my producer, Ronaldo Silvestre de Souza, who's currently running the show for us, is from the island of Madeira. And we're heading over to Madeira next year to do some filming and to go and spend some time. So I'll be drinking even more Portuguese wine.
But you have wine in Madeira. That is one of the oldest, in fact, for fortified wine. Yes, absolutely. And but if you go to Madeira, don't focus only on the wine. Focus on the whole thing around you, the whole experience, from the snow at the top, depending on the season, to the beautiful sea, to the sophisticated hotels, to the good food, to the fish. So Madeira is an all-encompassing experience.
I was already keen to go. I'm now even more so, thanks to the information I have in the picture you've painted. Ambassador, thank you so much for welcoming us into your home and for supporting the challenge today and allowing us to bring a little South African wine into a Portuguese house. And thank you for spending some time with me on the show. Really appreciate it.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure.
Ambassador Manuel Carvalho joining us today, and thank you very much indeed. We're going to be moving on in just a second. RJ Botha joins us, so as the ambassador makes his way, we'll say a quick hello to Elizabeth Bardan, who's watching. Fascinating show. Ronaldo Silvestre de Souza saying Oceanário de Lisboa is amazing, largest indoor aquarium in Europe. That's got nothing to do with wine, but it shows that Ronaldo is Portuguese. A big thank you to the ambassador there. Thank you, ambassador, for the beautiful endorsement of South Africa's Bush, Beach and Berg. I'm sorry you only said Portuguese wine, but that's understandable, Dad. Please keep pouring that South African wine for His Excellency. His secret is safe with us. And then Helen Nicol, my dear mum, such interesting interviews, especially to someone who loves Portuguese wine almost as much as South African. Well, we've had a Portuguese overload, so let's go back to South African. Welcome in a great South African winemaker, RJ Botha. Welcome.
Thank you.
I feel like I can't call you RJ, I have to call you Meneer or something. Every 11 minutes, Kleine Zalze wins another award. I've done the research. You guys are just on an absolute roll. You're like the late 1990s Real Madrid of the wine world. It's staggering. What's your secret?
It's actually a privilege. It's an amazing team, and it's a couple of years ago we made a conscious decision, and we sat around and said, guys, we want to be the top winery in South Africa, and we went on this quest, and we want to fly. Oh no, we want to do the South African flag for South Africa, and I must say I've got to take my hat off to the owner, to Kobus Basson. He's led us from the beginning, and we are 25 years old this year. It's an amazing experience so far, and great people. Amazing vineyards, and a little bit of winemaking.
As always with South African winemakers, being far too modest and underselling yourself, because there is this litany of awards that pay tribute to just how well you guys have done. And I think we've actually got you on the show again in a week or two talking about Chenin Blanc.
Yeah, you do.
Great, but let's focus on today and Cap Classique. Cap Classique in Stellenbosch, we tend to think South Africa are the two main areas. Robertson, led by Bubbles, does great work. France, you can't turn around without bumping into somebody who's decided to start making Cap Classique. But there is a long, rich heritage in Stellenbosch, starting with the Malans at Simonsig and spreading out. Stellenbosch Cap Classique, what is it about the terroir, about that part of the world, that allows you to make a bottle of wine that has won yet another award and sits above the others in the eyes of these judges?
Again, I think the vineyards. Stellenbosch is an amazing place, and I think we all know that Stellenbosch is the heart of the wine industry, or we specifically from Stellenbosch think it is the heart of the wine industry. But we've got amazing terroir, and I think everybody that's been to Stellenbosch, and maybe if you come and visit us, we can show you this, and it really starts in the soil. If you come and you have a closer look at the amazing mountains and the amazing sites, and I'm a firm believer that the mountainous areas of Stellenbosch and the granite soils and the coffee clip and the decomposed, not necessarily high potential soils, but almost the marginal soils, very well drained, makes exceptional wines. And not only Cap Classique, but we all know that there's amazing Sauvignon Blancs, there's amazing Chardonnays, there's amazing Cabernets, there's amazing Shiraz. Everything comes from Stellenbosch. And I've mentioned it now previous as well. We are starting to find out and starting to learn our own terroirs. We are still very young in the wine world. We are figuring out what to plant where and what works where. And I must admit, with this specific wine, the sites that it's coming from is incredible. It's the Pinot stands in these slate rocked vineyards or soils planted in slate. I didn't want to plant those vineyards because you can't dig a hole in that. It is literally these wonderful sites, and it looks over the whole of False Bay. You stand in this vineyard, and you see the ocean. You see False Bay, and I've been fortunate when we were growing up, or at varsity. Old Prof. Eben Archer said one day that a vineyard that can see the ocean is a happy vineyard, and I'm a firm believer of that. And this vineyard can see the ocean.
It's clearly very happy. I'm reading a book at the moment, Michael Fridjohn lent me, on Burgundy. It's an older book, not as old as Michael, but close. It speaks to the heritage. But as I read through that, and I read through stories of Beaune and of Chambertin and of Romani Conti and all these great areas of Côte de Nuit, these guys have got it easy because they've only got to focus on Pinot Noir and Chardonnay and maybe a little bit of one or two other minor grapes, but it's really just two, and in many cases just one. Here you are now, as Kleine Zalze, and not alone in South Africa, in making all manner of wines across the whole spectrum, which on one hand is fantastic because it gives me, the wine drinker, a great opportunity to drink the kind of wine that I like because you offer me everything. But how difficult is it for you as a brand to go, right, well, what do we promote? What do we talk about? What do we sell? Because we're winning awards everywhere. We're clearly doing lots of stuff right, but we've got to try and balance all of these and tell all of these stories at the same time.
No, true. I think it's true to what we are as South Africans as well. I think sometimes, and specifically, I think the older generation, I think I'm not the older generation, but I think South Africans, we wanted to, and we still do, we want to try and be everything to everyone. And I think it was a business model that worked. I think we are starting to focus a little bit more.
Is it a sustainable model?
No, I don't think so. I think we as South Africans are starting to focus a lot more towards the future. And again, as we are learning, as we are discovering what works, I think you will find these niche markets or niche entities. And I think if you look at Kleine Zalze, we produce a wide spectrum of things. We've always said that anything we do, we want to do well. So we will never put anything into a bottle that doesn't work. But our main focus, and we have in our company, I think if you look at Cabernet and Chenin Blanc, is probably our main go-to focus that we think we in the future will see the biggest growth. But then again, Sauvignon Blanc is an absolutely huge player for us in the world market and in the local market as well. And I'm still scared of Burgundy. I still need to read that book. I was there 2 years ago, and I'm scared to talk about Burgundy. And but we make a little bit of Chardonnay. We try and we play around. But yeah, I think there will be a much more focused approach from South Africa in the future.
And if you look at France, they've been going at a long time, and they've kind of narrowed things down. So it probably is where we're going. But as we stand, we've got loads of great wine, and we've got the particular wine that you've won with, the vintage brew. Tell me a little bit more about this wine, about what you think makes it special.
I mentioned we are actually a young winemaking country, and we are a young winemaking company. But We started making or producing sparkling wine. Cap Classique in 2009 was our first vintage, and that's another thing. Cobus, the owner, gave us free rein and said, "Guys, we've got to experiment. We've still got to play." And the same thing with all the other products, Chenin and Sauvignon. We are not necessarily, and we spoke about Stellenbosch now, but we know that not the best Sauvignon Blanc comes from Stellenbosch. There's certain sites that work, but we go search for pockets in Durbanville and Darling. The same with Chenin, the same with Cap Classique. So this is based on Stellenbosch, but there's a small percentage of Robertson fruit in there, and it's all to make the best possible wine that we can put into a bottle. Our heritage is Stellenbosch, but we go look for those very specific parcels that is planted on the right site that makes the correct component. We call it it's salt and pepper into your blends. That it completes the wine at the end of the day.
What Petit Verdot would be to your Bordeaux blend.
Exactly. Yeah. That 1 or 2%, and that makes the big difference. And this wine, it's 2015 was just an amazing vintage. Everything worked in that vintage. It was. We started harvesting and everything just came in at the end. When Cabernets were done, we said, "Oh, we're done." Everything just worked. It came in at the right time. There was no heat wave. It was cool, and 15 was that very, very specific vintage. And time makes these wines special. And this wine spent 3 years on the lees and another 2 years on the cork. And I've mentioned now before as well how much influence that time on the cork and the time on the lees. And Johan Malan mentioned how the lees and that fermentation is also it's the mother that keeps it healthy. And it's just such a special product. An amazing wine. I think it is at a very, very interesting time of its development and life at the moment. And I think it's still got another 10 years to go.
We were speaking a little earlier with Joaquim about the corks and the fact that you need 43 years after you've planted a tree to get that first quality cork. Not quite 43 years on this, but I'm getting a sense across the industry at the slightly higher level where time is something that people can afford to invest in their wine. We already know we've gone from 9 months to 12 months for the minimum on lease for it to be a bottle of Cap Classique, but you're talking about 3 years here. More and more of the producers understanding that if you hold it back, yes, you're champing at the bit of it because you want to try this, but the reward is certainly going to be there.
Yeah, for sure. And also remember that the cost involved in keeping things like this is enormous. So there's a big investment in this, and it's wonderful to see that and invest. It's a bit of return on investment, to say. It's wonderful to drink these wines, and that first time that you open a bottle of Cap Classique after the second fermentation and bottle is absolutely amazing because you stress, and then the first time that you open it 3 to 6 months after bottling, and there's a pop, then then you can calm down, and then you start tasting the wine, and then you keep on tasting and how it evolves every month or every 2 months along the way, and it's an amazing experience.
I've lost count of the number of winemakers who've looked me in the eye, lied through their teeth, and told me that the awards are completely peripheral. They only do it to make the wine and make the best possible stuff. You're only human. When you get endorsement, when you get accolades, of course it's going to mean something. You guys have got so much endorsement over the last while, and it's testament to the hard work you put in. This in particular, though, it's a style of wine that sits away from everything else that you make. When you get people, and you look at Heidi Dermany sitting on the panel, people like Melu Lambert, people who've got such experience, who know their wines so well, Spencer running the panel as well. When people like that are saying to you, you've got it right, as a winemaker, it's not being proud, it's not being self-important, it's just being human. When that says, hey, that's pretty awesome.
It's amazing. It is more than amazing. And you know what? I had a chat to Heidi, and she said then when they had the tasting with this wine as well, and there was a couple of winemakers on the panel as well, and of course it's blind and nobody knows. And she said so it was an unanimous decision. The wine was a clear winner, and she said it was actually amazing that all the winemakers on that panel scored this their number one. And that is also, it's actually for me, it's more important. Working with your peers and knowing your peers love this wine and love the style of wine that you are making, and also seeing value in that is amazing. It's an amazing journey, and really, I've got to take my hat off for Amorim and for the whole Cap Classique Association and what they are doing for not only the category of Cap Classique, but for South Africa as a wine producing country. It's amazing.
I think on that note, I might need to get you to pour me another glass
Yeah,
of it, just to be absolutely sure, because I can't trust these judges. I've got to back my own palate. While we do that, there's now just a little bit of pressure, RJ, because having won 82,000 different awards in the last month alone for just about everything you've produced, it puts you out there. People now know these guys are making amazing wine. They've got more stickers than they've got space for bottles. You're going to have to move on to exclusively magnums if you're going to get all your stickers on, which on one hand, that's fantastic. It shows that people love what you do and across the board. But it also says there's a little bit of pressure because you've got to keep doing this because there's now a sense of expectation.
Of course. Challenge accepted. We have a wonderful team, and we're actually a young team that has a vision of where we want to go. And at the end of the day, we've got to sell wine, and that's the main thing. We've got to make exceptional wine to sell. But the expectation is already there, and we will keep on moving. And the wonderful thing is that we need to keep evolving, and I think that we will do. We are, as I mentioned, young. I'm the oldest one in the cellar, and I'm 36. So we've got a couple of younger winemakers. My wife works with us as well. Henry, Lisa Berry, all between 26 years old and so on, and 36. And we are innovative. We are playing around. We see things differently, and we are not scared to take chances. I think that also plays into our hand. We are not scared to make big decisions and to make almost ruthless decisions sometimes, and they don't always work. That's and I think that's again where our management comes in. That they are happy that we make these decisions, and if there's a stuff up somewhere, we handle it. But we do that, and we go search for new things. And we need to keep on evolving. We need to keep on knowing what the future wants, what the consumer wants, and how we're going to achieve that. But and I say this with a lot of respect and seriousness, that we need to know that we are South African. We need to stay South African. Don't go chasing Bordeaux. Don't go chasing Champagne. Don't go chasing Loire. Or, of course, learn from them. Go there, visit them. But we are South African, and we need to be proud of that. And we have our own entities and making our own wines. And I think that is what we are doing well. We are learning from others and implementing things and playing around, but we are true to what we are and true to what our vineyards are giving us.
Which indirectly speaks to the point that some of the very best champagne is almost as good as Cap Classique, which is a great point on which to say goodbye to you for now. We're going to have you back on the show, I know, in a week or two, talking about some Chenin Blanc and yet another award you have won. So we'll bring you back on then. For now, look, well done. This is terrific wine.
Thank you.
There's a reason the judges have loved it. We've been drinking it now. Even Carrie Adams loved this, and she hates everything. So you've done well here. Enjoy.
Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, RJ.
See you
back on the show.
Thank you.
All right, we've got one final guest joining us on Dan Really Likes Wine. We were going to have Johan and we were going to have Mr. Ferreira, but they're currently swimming in their underwear in the pool at the Portuguese Embassy. So instead, we'll go for somebody far cooler, far younger, and not unfamiliar to Dan Really Likes Wine. She's a good friend of mine, Heidi Dummy. Welcome.
Cheers, Dan. Thank you for the invitation.
Oh, it's a great pleasure. It's lovely having you on. It was delighted chatting to you. And there's a really good reason for doing so now, not just because you love wine and know wine back to front, but you're rather instrumental in our celebration today, because the judging for this Amorim challenge and the wines we've been tasting in great volumes, and happily so, you've basically decided on.
I know, and it's such a responsibility, isn't it? A happy responsibility. But I'm so delighted when you sit back after you know what they are, and to taste them and to see that the best really do rise to the top. The winners have been fantastic and have really expressed themselves well. And it's just such an exciting category because there's so many stylistic differences. You know, anyone who thinks that bubbles is just bubbles, oh, have we got lots to show you. And that's what's exciting about Cap Classique, is that the best thing that happens to Cap Classique is we stop trying to be champagne. And with experience and time, we're refining a category and a expression that is really, really Cap Classique. You know, it's South African. We're proud of the things that make us different from any other sparkling wine producing country. And that's what the producers are really able to harness. And it's because of the generosity of the Cap Classique Producers Association. There's really no other group of producers who share as much as the Cap Classique producers, and with good cause, because it's a very difficult category of wine to make and make well.
So elaborate on that. It's very easy to say, oh, we're proudly South African, we've got our own style. And for a lot of people who are just starting out, between a glass of Woods and a glass of Graham Beck, first taste, if you don't know a great deal about wine, they're not going to be that dissimilar because it's the initially the same style. But once you start learning a little bit, you will pick up differences. Very broadly speaking, and I know it's a very broad question, France is here, Champagne is here, Cap Classique is here. What is the crux of that difference?
Acid and climate. So there's no ways in South Africa we will ever be able to produce a wine, a base wine that you make a bubbly out of, a second fermentation process bubbly out of, with an acid that's as high as France. I mean, Champagne is at the northern limit of wine growing regions. You barely get grapes to ripen. Everything is challenging there. Whereas in South Africa, we have the sunshine. In fact, we have the exact opposite problem. We battle to pick our grapes at a point of ripeness when the acidity is still high enough to make a really good bottle fermented sparkling wine, remembering that the bubble comes from the secondary fermentation process in the bottle. So this is the challenge, and where we were trying to be champagne, now we're really trying to be ourselves, because we understand what happens to sunshine in a wine, then put into a bottle, then second fermented. And we have a great benefit in that, because of the fruit expression, we don't have to use as much dosage, which is the little bit of, special liqueur that's added at the end for sweetness, because it's got so much fruitiness that expresses itself. And we don't have to use, there's a lot of things that we don't have to use because we get that ripeness. But there's also a lot of challenges because we don't get the freshness, which is the acidity, which just lifts it up and gives it elegance and just gorgeous luminosity on your palate, like a little ballet dancer instead of more like a hug from an aunt. Yeah. So that's what we are starting to understand and get right. And also use of different varieties, use of different styles, which in Champagne is a big no-no. Here we are less restricted, and with time, everything is perfected in time. We're starting to really understand how to make the best bottle fermented sparkling wine to be Cap Classique, not to be Champagne, not to be Carbon, not to be Prosecco. Prosecco's tank fermented, but we're put into that category because we're so fruity. And so at the same sort of price point, unfortunately, because Prosecco is generally cheaper, but lands in South Africa at the same sort of price range as a Cap Classique. But a bottle of Cap Classique is handled 100 times at least by somebody to become what it is, to grow into a beautiful sparkling wine. And this year is really exciting because with the 50th anniversary, there's so many there's so much coming of age about it. However, a long way to go, amazing, exciting things in our future, and driven by some of the most passionate producers in the case.
You might hear a little noise in the background. The official tasting has finished, and so there is much frivolity and lots of jovial wine drinkers. As we come to the end of the show, just looking at where we stand, you mentioned the different varietals. We've chatted on the show in the past to Ken Forrester, who, if he had his way, he'd make Cabernet Sauvignon out of Chenin Blanc. So he's got his Sparkle Horse. I think Silverthorne are making some Colombard-based Cap Classique.
That beautiful new one.
We had RJ on a moment ago, and heaven help him, he once made some bubbles out of pinotage. So we've had lots of different expressions. Is there a future for that sort of wine, or do you think we're going to move into what is effectively a traditionally French influenced space in what we make our Cap Classique from?
So what is very immediately obvious is the lessons learned by 650 years or plus of bottle fermentation in champagne is definitely valuable. So it just so happens that a lot of the best Cap Classiques are made of the traditional varieties, and I think that we'll continue down that road because champagne will always be the divine inspiration. But then when we absolutely invite experimentation to see what really works for South Africa and what really works for Portugal. And again, I say is that, you know, when we stop trying to be champagne, there's so much more scope to experiment, to try. I mean, there's so much fun going on out there, and we certainly as a panel, we're very open-minded, you know, so we don't know the varieties, we don't know the vintage, we don't know the producer, we know nothing about what's put in front of us. But what we do, I mean, when you pick up something that's quite quirky, something that's edgy, we definitely don't discount it. I mean, it's definitely in with a chance, if that makes sense. And so we'll see where the future takes us, because we've only had 50 years experience. You know, champagne's all grown up, it can look after itself, but Cap Classique is really only beginning its journey. And it's so exciting to be part of it.
You were part of the judging panel. Final question for you before we wrap up. It's been a really cool show from here at the Portuguese Embassy in Pretoria, where the party, I suspect, is only just getting started, and that is about the top wines, the wines that have got really special attention. We've just chatted now to RJ about his Kleine Zalze, got the overall nod, and the Mariette also got particularly strong response from the judges. Tell me a little bit about those top wines and why they stand out for you.
So what we look for is...
Sorry, I have to go and actually make an attempt to work.
So we're still live at the moment. That was an interrupting chef, but just in that last question, talking about the Kleine Zalze, about the Mariette, just give us your thoughts from the judging panel.
So what we look for is something that really just is completely seamless and harmonious, that has the most spectacular, tiny, persistent bubble, and that also has something that's quite demure. You know, it can't be too bracing, it can't be too broad, so it's not too much of a hug, it's not too much of a pinch. And this particular wine we kept on coming back to because it absolutely is seamless. The harmony and integration on this wine, as well as the complexity and the intricacy of it, is there. And 2015 was such a fantastic vintage. And I think that they've also left it on the lees for long enough, because remember, is that a sparkling wine that is bottle fermented, and it needs to earn its Cap Classique stripes. It needs to have that leesy richness to be a pedigree bottle fermented wine. Without that, it's just a fizzy wine. You know, so this has absolutely all the hallmarks and is a very worthy champion. And I'm so excited for them, because it really is a revelation. And then, as you know, that's what I said to you as well. The great thing about Amorim is we judged the 134 entries, and I judged quite a lot of sparkling wine competitions, and there's no other competition that has this many Cap Classiques. So if you really want to rub shoulders with the best, this is the one to be in. And this is also the one where you get discovered. So you don't have to make too much to be eligible to enter. So it gives the boutique producers a real chance. And it gives the more boutique-y sort of fringe wines a chance to rise. And I think that was one of the ones that we found this year. You know, it was almost like a discovery, and I think that it's going to rise to great heights. It's such a gorgeous wine. The quality of that bubble is just, it's like a prima ballerina. It is so gorgeous. It tickles your palate. It's got all the freshness of a blanc de blanc, but it's still demure and broad and rich on your palate with leasiness. It's gorgeous with the freshness that it's riveting, it's thrilling.
All I can simply say out of that is tomorrow morning, get on down to your local Pick and Pay, go and pick up a couple of bottles, look for something you've never had before, go and explore, because the sense of adventure, and I think that for me is as exciting as anything. There's a real sense of adventure to Cap Classique in South Africa. Our producers are breaking new ground. They're making amazing stuff. You guys have seen it through the sport, and we don't want to compare Cap Classique with champagne because they're different spaces. But the days of needing to celebrate with something that comes out of France, if you're in South Africa, they're gone. Because
it's crazy. The relative value of Cap Classique is mad. It's off the charts. And, there's 252 Cap Classique producers in the last platter. And most people, if you ask, can't name more than 5. So I like that suggestion. Go and be adventurous. Find some good stuff. Not that the top 5 are not good stuff. All those ones we absolutely adore are there for a reason, because it takes experience and knowledge to make a really good Cap Classique. So the big 5 are, they're there for a reason. But there's so much, there's deeper to dig now with Cap Classique, and that's what's exciting.
And that's a perfect note in which to wrap up what's been a really special afternoon here at the Portuguese Embassy. As I look out beyond me, I can see that Johan Malan has just beaten Pieter Ferreira in the first heat of the carrying a glass of Cap Classique butterfly. It's going to be a long evening here. A big thank you to our ambassador, Senor Carvalho, who was with us a little earlier on. Also to the team at Amorim for not just their support of this, but also Joaquim for being on the show. RJ joined us a little earlier from Kleine Zalze, the overall champion wine, and then world-class judge, internationally acclaimed wine super expert, and the person behind the Cape Wine Academy. If you haven't been online, go and have a look at the academy. If you want to learn more about wine, this is the person to speak to. Heidi, thank you.
Cheers, Dan.
It's always a pleasure catching up with you, drinking some great wine.
Cheers.
And over the next little while, look out for plenty more coming up with us next week. Amongst other things, we're going to be going away from Cap Classique and trying some champagne, because it's Champagne Day next Thursday. Is it as good as Cap Classique? But we'll try it anyway, and plenty more to come as well. Don't forget to stay part of that Pick and Pay Wine Club. Keep drinking great South African wine. Bubbles are a fabulous start. And a big thank you to the Portuguese Embassy and the Cap Classique Association for giving us a very special afternoon. I'm off to go and join the swimming relay. We'll see you live again on Monday evening. Goodbye. To join the Pick and Pay Wine Club, simply SMS your smart shopper number to 36775. It's absolutely free, and you'll get for yourself 3 times the smart shopper points on every bottle of wine bought. You'll also get a 20% discount on 10 different wines each month, a 25% discount on a case of wine, and a Magnum, some terrific competitions and invitations to awesome events.